Welcome to Boxing Info. I'm your host, The Islander, and it's been almost a year since I made a video, and I've been basically implored by many of you to come out and weigh in on this upcoming super fight, which finally did get made between Manny Pacquiao and Floyd Mayweather. Much over a personal meeting between the two at a Miami Heat game, but it's neither here nor there. There's so many things that have transpired since the last time I made a video that I wanted to maybe touch on some of them and maybe make more than one video this week, because I know I'm going to forget a bunch of stuff in the meantime. Getting back to this fight, I never thought I'd see this fight in my lifetime, and there's been a lot of experts weighing in on this and people writing and making comparisons to the basically past fights, especially like Marvin Hagler and Sugar Ray Leonard, and I'll touch on a lot of that as I move forward. There's also other fighters who have burst upon the scene that I have not talked about yet, and most notably is Nicholas Walters, the featherweight champion, who just basically has quietly ramped his way up to blasting out Victor Archinian and Nonito Donaire in consecutive fights, and I really wanted to talk about him a long time ago, and he's been kind of idle since October. But there has been for a few years now a changing of the guard, and I think what this fight represents between Mayweather and Pacquiao is the closing of a chapter in boxing as we move forward into the future. The same thing with this past weekend with Vladimir Klitschko fighting, and there's a distinct difference even in his fight with Jennings. You could see how the highly athletic guys that are going into boxing now, like himself and Deontay Wilder, Jennings and Deontay Wilder, are going to give the traditional boxer, European boxer, and American boxers like Vladimir Klitschko some problems. And I'm just sitting here, looking at it, thinking that I don't accept change well, especially in boxing. And it's kind of it's one of the things that turns me off. But when I see something bright like Nicholas Walters, it kind of wakes me up and gets me excited again about the possibilities of all these fights that could be made. And I also want to the last time I made a video, I was talking mainly about the Golden Boy Promotions having a meltdown with Richard Schaefer splitting off from Oscar De La Hoya, and really what that meant was Richard Schaefer and Al Heyman were kind of breaking away, and Al Heyman was siphoning a bunch of Golden Boy boxers that were under his management. And this goes back to who the power brokers are in boxing. At one time it was managers, a long time ago, long before I was into boxing. And then it started becoming promoters, and then cable companies, and then promoters again, and now a very strong management team, which was Al Heyman's, is starting to do some good for boxing. And I was pleasantly surprised. Was skeptical about the free TV cards that were coming on network TV, like the what I call the rabbit ear channels. And the first one, they were out of the gate with Keith Thurman taking on Robert Guerrero, which I thought was a good scrap. That Keith Thurman looked impressive, and it was on a prime time on a Saturday night on NBC. And then came the fight that I was, again, the fights aren't like they're Gaddy and Ward, but one Saturday afternoon a couple of weeks ago, I noticed, Adonis Stevenson was taking on Sakio Bika on CBS on the middle of a Saturday afternoon in Quebec, and I was just about to leave the house. I was like, wait a second, that fight's on, and turned it on, and I had this flashback to 30-something years ago, because even though it wasn't a great fight, and we knew who was going to win, that's what happened week in and week out, weekend, Saturday after Saturday after Saturday after Saturday, for a number of years. And keep this in mind, that's when there was only a WBA and a WBC champion, and there was only like 12 weight classes back then or less, not 17 weight classes, and not with 4 guys with belts in each one of them. So it was it kind of got my attention again, and my especially with the fight that's coming up next weekend. And then we also had really the best fight of the free fights, which was Lamont Peterson and Danny Garcia on primetime on NBC again. And if boxing heads in this direction, it will revitalize itself. Somebody was smart, and I'm not sure if it was Al Heyman, I'm not sure if it's Oscar De La Hoya, I'm not sure who it is, but they realized that the UFC has taken off, and in some respects, some people believe have passed boxing now, because the best fight the best in that arena, in that sport. And understand, the whole thing is ruled by one body, and that is the Furtado brothers and Dana White. But neither here nor there. I personally don't believe the shelf life of those guys is as long as somebody like Sakio Bika or Floyd Mayweather, or I look at the length of time and service of a boxer by when they came up, who were the newbies out of the Olympics. And you look from the 1992 Olympics that Oscar De La Hoya came from, okay, there aren't, I don't know who else is fighting off of that Olympic team, if there is anybody. I mean, Evander Holyfield, who retired, I'm assuming he retired a few in the past year or so after not fighting for a while. I mean, dates all the way back to 1984. Okay, so Mayweather now is in '96, when David Reed was the only gold medalist on that Olympic team, and he's been long gone. So we're stretching now. Vladimir Klitschko is off that 1996 Olympic squad, and Vitaly Klitschko was with De La Hoya at '92. So there's been a changing of the guard, where even guys in 2000 now, like Rocky Juarez, and I'm trying to think of who else was. They're starting to fade away, and there's a new crop coming up, an international crop. So as the boxing's changed, interest has waned way down, and I'm hoping this video is being shot without like time lapse or something crazy. It looks funny on my computer, but anyway. I digress. Al Heyman has done what I would consider a service to the sport if they get more and more of it on free TV, where people can they don't have to plan like a Saturday night around watching boxing like we're all doing for next Saturday, May 2nd. All right. Needless to say, new faces have arrived. They're not new to a lot of us, but, I really didn't know who Nicholas Walters was before he stepped in the ring with Vic Darchinyan. I had seen him, I had heard about him, but he has delivered 2 brutal knockouts in consecutive fights to 2 guys who have scrapped it out themselves twice, which are Darchinyan and Nonito Donaire. And he is a very big featherweight, and he reminds me of a hybrid cross between Salvador Sanchez, because of his size and length, and Prince Nassim Hamed with his just thudding power. He's going to be very difficult to beat, and I would really like to see him fight Mikey Garcia if that fight can be made. I know Mikey Garcia's can't fight at featherweight anymore, but he's going to basically, Walters, if they get him set up, he's going to be fighting. Hopefully they can get a fight between Abner Mares or the Olympian that just beat Johnny Gonzalez. So exciting fights amongst young, strong, dynamic fighters are on the line. All right, let me turn my attention to the super fight now that we're 8 minutes into this video, between Mayweather and Pacquiao. A lot has been written, a lot has been talked about. I'm sure all of you have got your own opinions. Everybody does. I mean, everybody who knows anything about the fight has their opinion. My wife saw a commercial and she's like, "Oh, that Pacquiao guy looks mean. He's got the eye of the tiger," or something like that. And I was like, "It doesn't know who he is," from Adam. And I said, you never meet a more humble guy than Manny Pacquiao. And I go forward from there. A lot of people have basically compared this fight to one between Sugar Ray Leonard and Marvin Hagler, which happened basically 28 years ago and has some similarities. The guy the Olympian was Leonard, who retired, unretired. The warhorse was Hagler, who was, basically destroying everything in his path. Similar to Pacquiao, he hadn't lost in well over 10 years. What am I saying? Yeah, something like 10 years prior to that. And it's thought to be the boxer versus the brawler and all this other kind of stuff. that's kind of where the similarities end. And more so, that's not even a similarity, because I think both Mayweather and Pacquiao are very... Mayweather's the master boxer. Pacquiao is very underrated boxing skills, especially with the use of his feet and his head movement. But the other thing that really basically begs to differ between these two, comparing these two fights, is that Leonard wasn't in his prime, but he was close to his prime. And Hagler, at that time, had not fought... Leonard was only his second fight removed from a fight 2 years previous against Tommy Hearns, which is the all-time classic that most action fights are measured by, or measured against. And he looked absolutely spectacular against Hearns. He didn't fight for a year and looked very vulnerable against John Mugabe. Still won the fight by knockout, clean knockout. But that fight gave Sugar Ray Leonard the idea he could beat Hagler. And when I say beat, I mean win. Because I'll argue to the end of the earth with anybody who thinks that Sugar Ray Leonard actually laid a beating on Marvin Hagler. No, he squeaked out a decision. All right, he didn't beat Hagler. Hagler didn't beat Leonard. Leonard was given a decision over Hagler. There was no beating. It was just one guy won the impression of two of the three judges. But neither here nor there. This video is not about that. Hagler's skills and his reflexes had taken a half a step backward, and that's what costed him that fight. Leonard's reflexes and skills were still preserved. In this fight, I don't think anybody's lost anything as much as I thought maybe Hagler lost a half a step. Everybody's talking about they're not the way they were in 2010, meaning Mayweather and Pacquiao, but I think they're a lot closer to the way they were in 2010 than Leonard and Hagler were 5 years previous, back to 1982, because Hagler was still ramping up at that time. Leonard was at the top of his powers when he walked away from the ring in 82, but I think he preserved himself better as Hagler was going through the wars. These two have been putting miles on their odometers consistently together. Even though Mayweather had, a brief retirement, a stint in prison, they've been accumulating, where Pacquiao's fought more fights, Mayweather's fought more rounds, and they probably have evened out. I haven't done the math on it. And then the other fight, the experts, I've heard Al Bernstein talking to ESPN about this, when they're talking about comparing Ali and Frazier, the Thriller in Manila, that when the fighters lose a little, we sometimes get a better fight. Here's the thing, I'm going to break it down to what I think is going to happen and how each one can win, or will win, is that I don't think these guys have lost that much. I think they are still far faster compared to their prime than any of those, than Ali and Frazier or Leonard and Hagler were. All right. My mind and my gut tell me that if one guy hasn't lost, and I've seen the brilliance of that guy, he's probably going to win again. But understand this: I don't know who is going to win the fight. I really don't know who's going to win the fight. I can only envision in my mind how each of them can win the fight. And with that said, I'm going to just back up a good 7 years. I got myself into a lot of trouble because I was absolutely certain that when Pacquiao got in the ring with De La Hoya, he was going to get killed. And I couldn't have been more wrong. I don't know whether it was just me kind of playing the safe card. I've bet against De La Hoya so many times. I was finally wising up that he'd pull this one out too. You don't know how much money of mine went down the drain over the years. I'm talking from 1996 or 95 and 96 all the way through 2008. How much money you see Floyd Mayweather making it rain. How much money I basically put out on every pay-per-view to see De La Hoya get his face kicked in. And it finally happened in 2008 when I least expected it to. Here's the point to that. I feel Manny Pacquiao's chances in this fight against Mayweather are far superior to what I felt 7 or 8 years ago. And with that said, my mind tells me Mayweather's got the skills to win the fight, but I don't know who is going to win. And here's what we're going to get down to: the brass tacks of who I think is going to win, how I think they're going to win, or why I think they can win. Okay? There is what I call the age factor. and that is they're both very close in age. There are more miles on Mayweather's legs than there are on Pacquiao's. If for any reason he loses even a cuticle of a step that he had in his previous fight or fights, Pacquiao's going to win the fight. If they're at the top of their powers and they both execute their game plans, okay, the chances are very good that Mayweather's going to win the fight. But here is what I see happening. If the two fighters, meaning Pacquiao and Mayweather, this is them right next to each other, okay? If they're this far away, neither one of them can do anything to each other. The southpaw and the conventional fighter. If they're this close together, Mayweather's in the shell, Pacquiao, is throw volumes of punches that'll hit arms and shoulders and gloves and this and that most of the time, okay? One shot or two might seep through, but really nothing is happening. Nothing's happening when they're this far apart and when they're this close together. This is the key to the fight. And mark my words, and you can wager everything you own on this, what I'm about to tell you. From the time it takes for them to get here to about here, whoever gets their punches off first wins this fight. There's no denying this, and there's nothing. I've seen interviews recently with Cotto, and I've seen interviews with Mosley. Cotto was asked directly on ESPN set who was faster, and he did not hesitate when he said it was Pacquiao. But here's the problem. Both of them obviously have, and I'm talking about both, Mayweather and Pacquiao, both of them have their strengths, and both of them have at least one weakness, okay? Mayweather's weakness is that he has a blind spot for a roundhouse overhand type right hand, a wide arcing right hand. The same punch that Zab Judah got him with, the same punch that Mosley got him with, the same punch that all the other southpaw at junior welterweight got him with for a bit. That's his blind spot. Mayweather's strength is, and I've said this since I saw him come out of the amateurs, he turns over punches with both hands reliably, like an old-time fighter. He has both the straight right hand, the left hook that turns over, uppercuts. He's got the whole punching arsenal. So he can get to an opponent with any punch. He's not deficient like, say, Cotto is with his right hand, or De La Hoya was with his right hand. He's got the whole arsenal. That's the strength. Plus his defense is far superior to anybody Pacquiao's ever been in the ring with. Far superior. Okay. The Pacquiao weakness, he is open, like every southpaw is, to a straight lead right hand. He's been hit by them. And now he's going in against the best at this, who lands punches with alarming frequency. Okay, now Pacquiao's strength is his upper body movement, his footwork, and his accuracy with punching at the correct distance. This is what gets lost in all analysis of the fights. This is what makes them probably the two best pound-for-pound fighters in the world, is that they throw and land with efficiency from the correct distance. That's why they're the two best fighters in the world, in my opinion. And when I was getting back to what I was saying before, when they're this far apart from each other, okay, when they're this far apart, nobody's doing anything. When they're on top of each other, nobody's doing anything. But from here to here is where the whole fight is going to be won or lost. Mark my words on this. If Mayweather gets through with the lead right hand first, everything Pacquiao does has to be reset. If Pacquiao lands, and specifically with his left hand, and then follow-up punches before Mayweather gets off a punch, the defensive shell's going to come up, clinching, reset. And that pattern, whichever way it works out, whoever gets to the mark first is the one that's going to dictate the fight, and is going to win the fight. I mean, don't get your expectations up. And I know I've seen most guys on ESPN, Showtime, HBO. They already know that the fight, I don't think the action can live up to the hype. I would be very surprised if it does. I won't count it out, but I'm very skeptical of that. It's going to be a very tactical bout. The only time I've ever seen Mayweather just lay it on the line, and throw down was in his first pay-per-view fight against Arturo Gatti, when he basically had to prove his worth. And Gatti, at that time, may he rest in peace, did not have the kind of firepower and danger in his self that Pacquiao has. If Mayweather's going to win the fight, it's going to be very similar to his fight against Zab Judah and against Mosley and against Maidana the second time, where he's just going to pick apart with the right hand. Couple of body shots, basically play tight defense up close, reset the distance, start all over again. Very simple. It's very simple. Now, most of you are probably thinking, why in the world would he say this and think Pacquiao has a real good chance of winning the fight? Well, I'm going to tell you why. Everybody thinks that for Pacquiao to win the fight, that he's got to bombard Mayweather with a volume of punches. That is not the case. In my mind's eye, and in the wheels that are spinning in my head, the way I see this working out for Pacquiao is this way. It's a fight they keep running over and over and over again on the cable networks that I have. If he approaches Mayweather the same way he approached De La Hoya, and the same way he approached Margarito, and the same way he approached Joshua Clottey, personally, in my heart, in my mind, I believe that's the way he can win the fight. Now, Mayweather, obviously, looking at defense and penetrating defenses, if he penetrated De La Hoya's defense, De La Hoya is not exactly a defensive wizard. He's okay. He defends himself with his offense. Margarito has zero defense. And Floyd Mayweather has the absolute best defense in the game today, dating back to probably Pernell Whitaker. Okay, if I'm being, truly honest with you and honest with myself. The best defense dating back to Pernell Whitaker. Okay? With this being said, though, everybody leaves themselves open even this much when they throw a punch. So again, the fight's going to be won at the middle distance, and who gets their punches off and who lands their punches first. Do I see either one of them stopping each other on what I would call, let's throw cuts out, a fight being stopped on the cut out the window. But do I see either one of them not concussing the other one? Probably not. But there's a phrase that sticks in my mind from watching these fights, that they've had, especially since they keep showing. Every time I turn the TV on, I keep seeing classic fight, Mayweather Maidana 2. Personally, I think the first fight was better. There was more suspense, which is what the last video I made was right after that fight. And then the other fight I keep seeing over and over and over again is the one between Pacquiao and De La Hoya. And the one thing that sticks in my mind is that Larry Merchant mentions it's death by 1,000 left hands. I'll be back and follow up with this